The woman stumbling through the alley at 3 in the morning wasn't supposed to hear the screams, but Tessa Sinclair had always been cursed with good timing and terrible luck in equal measure. She'd been walking home from her shift at the emergency veterinary clinic, exhausted and smelling faintly of antiseptic and dog shampoo, when the sound of a child crying pierced through the night air. Every instinct told her to call the police and keep walking. She'd lived in Chicago long enough to know that getting involved in things that happened in dark alleys after midnight was a recipe for disaster. But the cry came again, high and terrified, and Tessa found her feet moving before her brain caught up. She rounded the corner into a narrower passage between two old buildings, her phone already out with 911 typed but not yet called. What she saw made her blood freeze in her veins. 3 men in dark clothes were trying to force a struggling child into the back of a van. The boy couldn't have been more than 7 or 8, with the palest skin Tessa had ever seen, and hair so white it seemed to glow in the dim streetlight. He was fighting with a strength that seemed impossible for his size, actually managing to throw one of the men backward into the brick wall. "Stop!" Tessa shouted, her voice cracking but loud enough to echo. "I've already called the cops." It was a lie, but it worked. The 3 men turned toward her, and in that moment of distraction, the boy wrenched free and ran. Not toward Tessa, but past her, his small form moving with unnatural speed. One of the kidnappers swore viciously. "Get her phone!" Tessa didn't wait to see what they'd do. She turned and ran, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Behind her she could hear footsteps pounding on the pavement, but she'd run track in high school, and fear gave her wings now. She burst out onto a main street, gasping for air, and nearly collided with a late-night delivery truck. The driver honked furiously, but the noise and light seemed to make her pursuers think twice. When she looked back, the alley was empty. Tessa leaned against a storefront, shaking, finally hitting the call button for real. As she waited for the dispatcher to answer, she scanned the street for any sign of the white-haired boy. Nothing. He'd vanished like smoke. She gave her statement to the police when they arrived, described the men as best she could, but she could see the skepticism in their eyes when she mentioned how pale the child had been, how fast he'd moved. They took her information and told her they'd be in touch, but she knew that tone. They thought she'd seen some drug deal or domestic dispute and misunderstood. Tessa went home, locked every door and window twice, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling until dawn, unable to shake the image of that terrified boy. She didn't expect to ever think about it again. She was wrong. 3 nights later, Tessa was closing up the clinic alone. Dr. Martinez had left early for his daughter's recital, and the last patient, a cat with an ear infection, had been picked up an hour ago. She was just setting the alarm when she heard the knock on the glass door. Her first instinct was to ignore it. They were closed and she wanted to get home before midnight for once. But the knock came again, insistent, and when she looked up she saw him. The boy from the alley. He stood outside the door, that same impossibly pale skin and white hair, dressed in clothes that looked expensive but rumpled, as if he'd been wearing them for days. His eyes, when they met hers through the glass, were a deep crimson red. Tessa's hand hovered over the alarm panel. Every rational thought told her to activate it, to call the police, to not open that door. But the boy pressed his small palm against the glass, and she could see that he was shaking. Against every ounce of common sense she possessed, Tessa unlocked the door. The boy stepped inside, and she caught her breath. Up close, he was even more unusual. His features were too perfect, too symmetrical, like a porcelain doll, and those eyes, those red eyes, watched her with an intelligence far beyond his apparent age. "You helped me," he said, and his voice had a strange accent she couldn't place, old and formal. 3 nights passed. In the alley. "Are you okay?" Tessa asked, crouching down to his level. "Where are your parents? Did those men hurt you?" "I was not harmed, thanks to your intervention." He tilted his head, studying her. "You are afraid, yet you opened the door. Why?" "You're a kid," Tessa said simply. "You looked scared." Something flickered across his ancient young face. "I am called Nikolai, and I have been searching for you. How did you find me?" "I have my ways." He glanced toward the window, and Tessa saw genuine fear cross his features. "They are still hunting me. The ones you frightened away have brought others, more dangerous ones. I need sanctuary until sunrise." "Sunrise? That's hours away. Look, we should call the police or child services, or no mortal authorities can help with this matter," Nikolai interrupted. "Please, I ask only for shelter until dawn. Then I will be safe, and I will ensure you are rewarded for your kindness." There was something in his tone, in those unnatural eyes, that made Tessa's next question come out as barely a whisper. "What are you?" Nikolai smiled, and she saw the points of his fangs. "I believe you know." Tessa should have screamed, should have run, should have done anything except what she did. which was sit down hard on the floor and start laughing hysterically. Vampires, she gasped between giggles that were bordering on hysteria. Vampires are real, of course they are. Why not? This week has been absolutely insane anyway. Nikolai watched her with concern. Are you quite well? No, Tessa said honestly, the laughter dying as quickly as it had come. No, I'm really not. But come on, we can wait in the back room, no windows. She led him to the small break room where the staff ate lunch, a windowless space with a microwave, a small fridge and a truly unfortunate floral couch that Dr. Martinez's wife had donated. Nikolai settled onto it with a grace that seemed at odds with his child-sized body. So, Tessa said, sitting across from him in the folding chair, you're a vampire, a child vampire. Not precisely. I am 143 years old, but yes, I was turned as a child and remained so in appearance. There was deep bitterness in his voice. A curse I have borne for over a century. Who were those men? Why were they trying to take you? Nikolai's expression darkened. Vampire hunters, but not the righteous kind from your stories. These are mercenaries, hired by those who wish to use me as leverage against my father, your father, Vladislav Drasen, the vampire king of the Northern Territories. Tessa blinked. There's a vampire king. In Chicago, not in Chicago specifically. The courts exist in spaces adjacent to your mortal cities, hidden but close. Nikolai leaned forward. My father is powerful, ancient, and has many enemies. I am his only heir. If his rivals control me, they control him. Why doesn't he just come get you himself? He does not know where I am. I was taken during a transfer between safe houses. I managed to escape once, thanks to you, but I have no way to contact the courts from here. The hunters have blocked the usual channels, and I am too young, too weak to break through their barriers alone. He met her eyes. I need to survive until sunrise, and the hunters will be forced to retreat, and I can signal for help. Tessa processed this, her mind racing. How long have you been running? 4 days. Have you eaten? Do you need? She couldn't quite say the word. Blood. Nikolai's smile was sad. I fed before I was taken. I can last another few days if needed. Do not fear. I would never harm you. You saved me. Those men who took you, are they human? Yes, humans who have learned of our existence and seek to profit from it. Some hunt us out of fear or hatred. Others, like these, see only the gold they can earn. Before Tessa could respond, the front window of the clinic exploded inward. She screamed as glass showered across the reception area. Nikolai was on his feet instantly, his small hand gripping her wrist with impossible strength. They found us, he hissed. Run! But there was nowhere to run. The back door was at the other end of the clinic, and Tessa could already hear footsteps crunching over broken glass. She looked around wildly, then grabbed Nikolai and shoved him into the supply closet. Stay there. Don't make a sound. They will hurt you. I'm human. I'll talk my way out. You're what they want. She closed the door before he could argue. 3 men entered the break room. 2 she recognized from the alley, but the third was different. Older, with gray streaking his hair and cold blue eyes that assessed her like she was an interesting insect. Good evening, he said pleasantly, as if he hadn't just broken into a veterinary clinic. I'm looking for a child, very pale white hair. I believe you've encountered him a few nights ago. I don't know what you're talking about, Tessa said, proud that her voice barely shook. I already talked to the police about what I saw. If you're connected to that, you should probably leave before I call them again. The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Sinclair, Tessa. May I call you Tessa? I'm going to be very frank with you. The boy you're protecting isn't human. He's dangerous, a monster. We're being paid very well to collect him, and we're not leaving without him. There's no one here but me. Really? Because one of my men tracked him to this location. And you see, Tessa, we have resources you can't imagine. Technology that can detect their kind. He pulled out a device that looked like a modified phone, and on its screen, Tessa could see a heat signature behind the closet door. Not red like a human's would be, but blue and cold. Her heart sank. The man nodded to one of his companions, who moved toward the closet. Tessa stepped in front of him without thinking. Get out of the way, the hunter said. No. Tessa, the older man said, his patience clearly thinning. You seem like a nice girl. Good job, clean record. You volunteer at the animal shelter on weekends. You don't want to die for something you don't understand. Maybe not, Tessa said. But I'm not going to let you kidnap a child either. The hunter who'd moved toward the closet grabbed her arm, hard enough to bruise. Tessa reacted on instinct, the self-defense classes she'd taken finally paying off. She stomped on his instep and drove her elbow into his solar plexus. He grunted and loosened his grip just enough for her to wrench free. The closet door exploded outward. Nikolai stood there, and for the first time Tessa saw the monster the hunter had spoken of. His eyes glowed crimson, his fangs were fully extended, and the air around him seemed to shimmer with barely contained fury. You will not touch her, he snarled, his child's voice layered with something ancient and terrible. The older hunter raised what looked like a modified cattle prod. Back down, bloodsucker, or will. He didn't get to finish. The window behind him shattered inward, but this time it wasn't the hunter's doing. The vampire that poured through the broken glass was the most beautiful and terrifying thing Tessa had ever seen. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with snow-white hair that fell past his shoulders and skin so pale it seemed to glow in the fluorescent lights. His features were sharp and aristocratic, his eyes the same deep crimson as Nikolai's but colder, harder, ancient beyond measure. He wore a long black coat over clothes that looked like they cost more than Tessa's car, and when he moved, it was with a predator's lethal grace. "Father," Nikolai breathed. The Vampire King surveyed the room with those terrible eyes. When his gaze landed on the hunters, his expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "You have 5 seconds to release my son," Vladislav Draxin said, his voice soft and more terrifying for it. "After that, I will not be merciful." The older hunter, to his credit, didn't run. Instead, he grabbed Nikolai with inhuman speed, pressing a silver blade to the boy's throat. "Stand down or I open his throat right here." Vladislav went utterly still. Tessa could see the calculation in his eyes, the terrible restraint it took for him not to rip the man apart. But the silver knife was at his son's neck, and even an immortal king had limits. "What do you want?" Vladislav asked, each word carefully controlled. "Safe passage out of here. A head start, then I'll release the boy. You'll kill him the moment you're clear. I know Mikhail sent you. I know this isn't about ransom." The hunter's smile confirmed it. "Smart king. But do you really want to test whether I'm willing to follow through?" Tessa didn't think. Couldn't afford to. She grabbed the scalding hot pot of coffee that had been sitting on the burner for hours and hurled it directly into the hunter's face. He screamed and jerked backward, and in that instant Nikolai dropped and rolled clear. Vladislav moved so fast Tessa's eyes couldn't track it. One moment he was across the room, the next he had the hunter by the throat, lifting him off his feet. "You threatened my son," Vladislav said, almost conversationally. "Twice, you tried to harm what is mine. There will be no mercy for you." The sound of the hunter's neck breaking was sickeningly loud in the small room. The other 2 hunters ran. Vladislav let them go, instead dropping to his knees beside Nikolai, his hands running over his son with desperate gentleness that seemed at odds with the violence he'd just committed. "Are you hurt? Did they harm you? Nikolai, answer me." "I am unharmed, father. This woman protected me. Twice now." Nikolai looked at Tessa, who was standing frozen against the counter, her brain trying to process what had just happened. "She saved me." Vladislav rose and turned those ancient eyes on her. Tessa forced herself not to look away, even though every instinct screamed at her to run. "You sheltered my son," he said. "It wasn't a question." "He needed help," Tessa managed. "Anyone would have. No, they would not have." He took a step closer and she could smell something like winter frost and old books. "You risked your life for a child you did not know. A vampire child. Most of your kind would have fled in terror." "Most of my kind don't know vampires exist," Tessa pointed out, hysteria bubbling up again. "And I'm starting to think my life would be a lot simpler if I didn't either." To her surprise, Vladislav's lips twitched. It might have been a smile. "Perhaps, but ignorance would not change what has occurred. Tessa Sinclair, you have saved my only heir. Twice. By the old laws, by the codes my kind have honored for millennia, I am in your debt." "I don't want anything," Tessa said quickly. Just take Nikolai somewhere safe. Make sure those men can't hurt him again. That's all I want. It is not that simple. I have sworn a blood debt. I will repay you, Tessa Sinclair. This is not negotiable." He glanced at the dead hunter on the floor. "And there are practical matters. The others will report back to whoever hired them. They know you are involved. They know where you live, where you work. You are no longer safe in the mortal world." The weight of that settled over Tessa like a lead blanket. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that you must come with us to my court. Until this threat is eliminated and I can ensure your safety, I can't just leave. I have a job, an apartment, a life which will mean nothing if you are dead." Vladislav's tone was blunt but not unkind. Those men work for Mikhail Volkov, a rival who has sought my throne for centuries. He will not stop with just the hunters. He will send others worse things. You are a loose end, and he does not leave loose ends." Tessa looked at Nikolai, who nodded gravely. "Father speaks true. I am sorry, Tessa. My presence has placed you in danger." "This isn't your fault," Tessa said automatically. Then to Vladislav, "How long are we talking? Days? Weeks? Until Mikhail is dealt with? Could be days, could be months. I cannot give you a certain timeline." He moved closer, his presence overwhelming. "But I vow to you on my honor as king that you will be protected, housed, and cared for as a guest of the highest station. And when this is over, you may choose to return to your life or other arrangements can be made." Other arrangements? We will discuss that if the time comes. He held out his hand, pale and long-fingered. Come, Tessa Sinclair. Let me repay the debt I owe you. Let me keep you safe as you kept my son safe. Tessa looked at that extended hand for a long moment, looked at Nikolai's hopeful face, looked at the dead hunter on the floor and thought about whoever else might be coming. She took the Vampire King's hand. His skin was cold, but his grip was steady. We leave immediately. Gather what you need. We have 5 minutes before more will come. 5 minutes to pack up my entire life? You need only essentials. Everything else can be acquired. Tessa grabbed her purse, her phone, and on impulse, the framed photo of her parents from her locker. 4 minutes later, she was following Vladislav and Nikolai out into the alley behind the clinic. A car was waiting. Not a car, a vehicle that looked like something from a luxury magazine, all sleek black lines and tinted windows. The driver who opened the door was pale and white-haired, another vampire. Your Majesty, he said with a bow. The court has been prepared for your arrival. Thank you, Lucien. Take us home. The interior of the car was even more luxurious than the outside, all soft leather and dark wood. Nikolai settled beside Tessa, and Vladislav sat across from them, his eyes never leaving her face. You are frightened, he observed. Terrified, Tessa admitted. But I'm good at functioning while terrified. Comes with working in emergency veterinary care. You are a healer of animals. I'm a vet tech. I help Dr. Martinez with surgeries, emergencies, that kind of thing. She laughed shakily, which is probably the most useless skill to have in a vampire court. On the contrary, the ability to remain calm in crisis and care for those weaker than yourself are invaluable traits anywhere. Vladislav leaned forward slightly. Tell me what happened. Nikolai has told me pieces, but I would hear it from you, so Tessa told him. About hearing the screams, intervening in the alley, Nikolai finding her at the clinic. When she got to the part about throwing the coffee, Nikolai actually laughed. She has warrior's instincts, father. She did not hesitate, I noticed. Those red eyes studied her with new intensity. You said anyone would have helped, but that is not true. Most would have walked past. Most would not have opened the door when he came seeking shelter. What makes you different, Tessa Sinclair? Tessa thought about that. I work with scared, hurt things every day. I've learned that sometimes the ones that look the most dangerous are just the most frightened, and I guess I've never been good at walking away when someone needs help. A dangerous quality, Vladislav said softly, but an admirable one. The car descended into an underground parking structure, but instead of stopping at any of the normal levels, it kept going down and down and down. Tessa lost count after 7 levels. Finally, they emerged into a vast space that looked like it belonged in a Gothic cathedral, all soaring arches and elaborate stonework. Welcome, Vladislav said, to the court of the Northern Territories. Tessa stepped out of the car into another world. The space was enormous, carved out of the bedrock beneath the city. Chandeliers hung from the vaulted ceiling, their crystals casting rainbow light across everything. The architecture was a mix of Gothic grandeur and modern elegance, old stone arches framing spaces filled with contemporary furniture and artwork. Vampires moved through the halls, all of them pale and beautiful and terrifying, all of them stopping to stare as their king passed, and all of them staring even harder at the human woman walking beside him. Father, a voice called out, and a female vampire approached. She was stunning, with long white hair braided with silver threads and eyes like polished garnets. Thank the darkness you have returned. We were preparing search parties. Her gaze fell on Nikolai and her expression softened. Young prince, are you well? I am unharmed, Aunt Seraphine, thanks to this woman. Nikolai took Tessa's hand. Tessa, this is my aunt, Lady Seraphine Drayson. She is father's most trusted advisor. Seraphine's eyes widened as she looked at Tessa. A human here? She saved Nikolai twice. She is under my protection and is to be treated as an honored guest. Vladislav's tone left no room for argument. Prepare the rose suite for her. Ensure she has everything she needs. And summon the council. We have much to discuss. As you command, Your Majesty. Seraphine bowed, but her curious gaze lingered on Tessa. Come, my dear, let me show you to your chambers. You look exhausted. Tessa was exhausted. Bone deep, soul deep exhausted. She followed Seraphine through winding corridors, aware of the eyes following her every step. Nikolai walked on her other side, apparently unwilling to leave her alone. The rose suite turned out to be a set of rooms larger than Tessa's entire apartment. The bedroom alone was massive, dominated by a 4-poster bed with curtains the color of deep burgundy. There was a sitting room with a fireplace, a bathroom with a tub that could fit 3 people, and a balcony that looked out over the underground city. I have never seen anything like this, Tessa breathed. Few humans have, Seraphine said. Our kind prefer to remain hidden. It is safer that way. She gestured to a wardrobe. I have taken the liberty of providing clothing. We are similar in size, I believe. If you need anything else, anything at all, simply ring." She indicated a silver bell on the bedside table. "Thank you," Tessa said. "Aye, thank you." Seraphine smiled, and it was genuinely warm. "No, child, thank you. Nikolai is precious to us all. The thought of losing him." She shook her head. "You have given us back something irreplaceable. Rest now, you are safe here." After she left, Nikolai lingered by the door. "Will you be all right?" he asked. "I think so," Tessa said. "Are you? Really?" "Yes. I am home, and I am safe, and that is because of you." He hesitated. "My father can seem harsh. He has ruled for 8 centuries, and sometimes he forgets how to be gentle. But he is a good man, and he honors his debts. You need not fear him." "I'm not afraid of him," Tessa said, surprised to realize it was true. "Or not much, anyway. He's intimidating, but he came for you the second he knew where you were. That counts for something." Nikolai smiled. "Sleep well, Tessa Sinclair. Tomorrow the real work begins." He left, and Tessa was finally alone. She sank onto the bed, which was ridiculously comfortable, and tried to process everything that had happened. 3 days ago, her biggest concern had been whether Dr. Martinez would let her lead the next surgery. Now she was in an underground vampire court, under the protection of a vampire king, because she'd saved his son from hunters. Her life had officially become insane. She should have been terrified. Should have been planning her escape. Instead, she found herself thinking about Vladislav's eyes when he'd looked at Nikolai, that desperate gentleness, about the way he'd thanked her, the weight of sincerity in his voice. Tessa changed into one of the nightgowns from the wardrobe, soft silk that probably cost more than her monthly rent, and climbed into bed. Despite everything, sleep claimed her almost immediately. She woke to find Vladislav sitting in the chair beside her bed. Tessa yelped and scrambled upright, clutching the blankets. "What are you doing?" "Watching over you," he said calmly, as if this was perfectly normal behavior. "You are under my protection. That means ensuring your safety personally. By watching me sleep? That's creepy. Is it? I am unfamiliar with modern human courtship rules." "Courtship? Who said anything about courtship?" Tessa's heart was racing for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. Vladislav tilted his head, studying her with those ancient eyes. "You are beautiful when you are flustered, but you are right. I am being presumptuous. Forgive me." He rose to leave. "Wait," Tessa said, surprising herself. "Why did you really come here?" He turned back. "Because I needed to see you. To assure myself that you were real and safe. Because in 800 years I have never met anyone like you, and it unsettles me." "Unsettles you?" "You charged into danger to save my son without hesitation. You threw boiling liquid at an armed hunter to protect him. You are mortal, fragile, yet you act with the courage of one who has lived a dozen lifetimes." He moved closer. "And when I look at you, I feel something I have not felt in centuries. Curiosity, interest, the desire to know everything about you." Tessa's mouth was dry. "That's probably just gratitude. I saved your son. Of course you're interested in me, perhaps." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers were cold but gentle. Or perhaps it is something more. Time will tell. He left before she could respond, and Tessa sat in the massive bed, her heart pounding, wondering what she'd gotten herself into. The next few days passed in a blur. Tessa was given free rein of the court, though she was always accompanied by either Nikolai or one of the guards Vladislav had assigned to her protection. She learned that the vampire court was like a small city, completely self-sufficient, with hundreds of vampires living in the elaborate network of chambers beneath Chicago. She met the council members, ancient vampires who regarded her with varying degrees of suspicion and curiosity. She learned about vampire politics, which were apparently even more cutthroat than human politics, and she learned about Mikhail Volkov, the rival who had ordered Nikolai's kidnapping. "He is old," Vladislav told her during one of their increasingly frequent conversations. "Nearly as old as I am. He believes that I have grown soft, that I care too much for the mortals and too little for vampire dominance. He seeks to take my throne and return our kind to the old ways." The old ways? When vampires ruled openly. When humans were cattle to be fed upon at will. His expression was grim. "I have spent centuries building peace between our worlds. Mikhail would destroy all of it in his quest for power." They were in his private study, a room lined with books that smelled of old leather and older paper. Tessa had been summoned to discuss security arrangements, but had instead found herself drawn into deeper conversation. "Why do you care?" she asked. "About peace with humans, I mean. Most of your kind seem to think we're beneath them. Because I have seen what happens when we give in to our worst natures. I have seen the villages burned, the innocent slaughtered. I have seen humans hunt my kind with torches and stakes, driven by justified fear." He looked at her. "Violence begets violence. If we are to survive both of our kinds, we must find a better way. That's a very modern view for someone who's 800 years old. I have had 800 years to learn from my mistakes. He moved to the window, looking out over his underground kingdom. When I was young, I was a monster. I thought humans were nothing more than food. Then I met someone who changed my mind. A human woman, a healer not unlike yourself. She found me wounded after a battle with rivals and nursed me back to health despite knowing what I was. She taught me that courage and compassion are not weaknesses, but the greatest strengths. His voice softened. She is long dead now, of course, but I have never forgotten her lesson. Tessa felt a strange pang in her chest. You loved her, in my way, yes, though I was young and foolish and did not realize it until too late. He turned back to her. But that is ancient history. We have more pressing concerns. Like Mikhail. My spies report that he is planning something. The kidnapping was only the first move. He will strike again, and soon. Can't you just, I don't know, challenge him to a duel or something? Isn't that how vampire politics work? Vladislav actually laughed. You have been reading too many novels, but you are not entirely wrong. I could challenge him, but he would refuse. He knows I am stronger in single combat. He will try to undermine me, turn my allies, weaken my position until he can strike with overwhelming force. So what do? We? He raised an eyebrow. This is not your fight, Tessa. You made it my fight when you brought me here, when you said I was under your protection. She stood, meeting his eyes. I'm not some helpless damsel. If Mikhail is going to come after me anyway, I'd rather be prepared. Something sparked in his gaze. You truly are remarkable. Very well, if you wish to help, I will not stop you. But you will follow my orders without question. Agreed? Agreed. He held out his hand, and she shook it, feeling the cold strength of his grip. When he didn't immediately let go, she looked up and found him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Vladislav, she said softly. You should call me Vlad, he said. My friends do. Are we friends? I hope we are becoming so. He released her hand slowly. Come, there is someone I want you to meet. He led her through the court to a training room where a vampire was sparring with 3 others simultaneously. The vampire was fast, faster than anything Tessa had seen, moving like liquid shadow. Within seconds, all 3 opponents were on the ground. Excellent form, Damien, Vlad said. The vampire turned, and Tessa saw he was younger than most of the others, or at least turned younger. He couldn't have been more than 25, with the typical pale skin and white hair, but his eyes were a lighter red, almost pink. Your Majesty, Damien said with a bow. Is this the human everyone is talking about? Tessa Sinclair, meet Damien Frost. He is my best warrior and will be overseeing your training. Training? Tessa repeated. If you are to be involved in this, you need to be able to defend yourself, Vlad said. Damien will teach you. Damien looked skeptical. With respect, Your Majesty, she is human, fragile. What could I possibly teach her in the time we have? Enough to survive, Vlad said quietly. That is all I ask. Over the next week, Tessa learned just how fragile humans were compared to vampires. Damien was a patient teacher, but the training was brutal. He taught her how to move, how to anticipate attacks where vampires were vulnerable, how to use weapons designed to combat them. Silver slows us down, Damien explained, demonstrating with a silver blade. Not as much as the legends say, but enough. Wood through the heart is fatal, but you have to be precise and fire. We heal from most things, but fire scars us permanently. Tessa practiced with wooden stakes until her arms ached, learned to throw silver knives until she could actually hit the target sometimes. Damien never went easy on her, but she appreciated that. She was surrounded by immortal predators. She needed every advantage she could get. Vlad often watched these training sessions, standing in the shadows at the edge of the room. Tessa could feel his eyes on her, the weight of his attention. Sometimes, after training, he would walk with her back to her chambers, asking about her life before, her family, her dreams. My parents died when I was 19, Tessa told him during one of these walks. Car accident. I was supposed to be with them that night, but I stayed late at work. Sometimes I think if I'd been there, you would be dead alongside them, Vlad said bluntly. Do not waste your life on survivor's guilt, Tessa. Honor their memory by living. Is that what you do with the woman you loved? Every day, he said softly. Every choice I make, I ask myself if she would be proud. If I am living up to the man she believed I could be. They had stopped outside her door. In the dim light of the corridor, Vlad looked younger somehow, less ancient and terrible, more human. I think she would be proud, Tessa said. You're trying to build something good. That takes courage. So does what you do. Every day you choose to help, to heal, to stand between the weak and those who would harm them. That is its own kind of courage. He reached out, his fingers ghosting along her cheek. You are extraordinary, Tessa Sinclair. I hope you know that. Her heart was pounding. Vlad? Yes? She wanted to close the distance between them. Wanted to know if his lips were as cold as his fingers, if he would kiss her with the same intensity he brought to everything else. But fear held her back. Fear of what it would mean, of where it could lead. "Thank you," she said instead. "For training me, for protecting me, for treating me like I matter." Something flickered in his eyes. Disappointment? But his voice was gentle when he said, "You do matter, more than you know." He left her at her door, and Tessa went inside feeling like she'd just made a terrible mistake, or possibly avoided making one. She couldn't tell anymore. 2 weeks into her stay at the court, everything changed. Tessa was in the library, reading a book on vampire history that Nikolai had recommended, when Seraphine burst in, her usual composure shattered. "We are under attack," she said. "Mikkel's forces, they have breached the outer defenses." Tessa's blood went cold. "How?" "Traitors within the court. They opened the sealed passages." Seraphine grabbed her arm. "Come, we must get you to the safe room." "What about Vlad? Nikolai?" "They are fighting. Now move." But they didn't make it to the safe room. 3 vampires Tessa didn't recognize blocked their path, and the malice in their eyes was unmistakable. "The human pet," one sneered. "Mikhail will pay well for her." Seraphine moved in front of Tessa, fangs bared. "You will have to go through me, traitor." "With pleasure." The fight was fast and vicious. Seraphine was skilled, but she was outnumbered. Tessa watched in horror as one of the attackers caught her with a silver blade across the ribs. Seraphine went down with a cry of pain. The vampire advanced on Tessa. She didn't think. She grabbed the silver knife from her belt, the one Damien had given her for protection, and threw it exactly as he'd taught her. It caught the vampire in the shoulder, not a killing blow but enough to make him stumble. Tessa ran. She raced through the corridors, no idea where she was going, just knowing she had to get away. Behind her she could hear footsteps, growls, the sounds of fighting echoing through the court. She turned a corner and ran straight into someone. Arms closed around her, cold and strong, and Tessa fought instinctively before a familiar voice said, "Peace, it is me." Vlad. He was covered in blood, though Tessa couldn't tell if it was his or someone else's. His eyes were blazing red, his fangs extended, and he looked like the monster she'd first glimpsed 3 weeks ago. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. "No, but Seraphine, I know. Damien is with her. She will live." He pulled her close, one hand cupping the back of her head. "You are safe. I have you. Where's Nikolai?" "Secured in the inner chamber. He is protected." Vlad drew back enough to look at her. "Mikhail is here. He came himself, leading the attack. This ends tonight. What are you going to do?" "What I should have done long ago. Challenge him. End this." "You said he wouldn't accept a challenge." "He will now. I am going to offer him something he cannot refuse." Vlad's expression was grim. "You?" Tessa's heart stopped. "What?" "Not truly. But he does not know that. I will offer to trade you for peace. He will agree, and when he comes to collect, I will kill him." He touched her face. "I would never truly give you to him, Tessa. I swear it on my name, on my throne, on everything I am." "I know," Tessa said, surprising herself. "I trust you." Something profound moved through his expression. "That is the greatest gift you could give me." He kissed her forehead, cold lips gentle against her skin. "Stay here. Damien will come for you soon. This will be over quickly." "Vlad." "Wait." But he was already gone, moving with that inhuman speed. Tessa waited in the shadowed alcove, her heart racing. Minutes passed that felt like hours. Then Damien appeared, looking battered but alive. "Come on," he said. "The king wants you in the throne room." The throne room was enormous, all vaulted ceilings and elaborate stonework. Vlad sat on his throne, looking every inch the ancient king. Nikolai stood beside him, pale but unharmed. And kneeling before the throne, bound in silver chains, was another vampire. He was older than Vlad, or at least turned older, with harsh features and eyes like frozen blood. He radiated cruelty and old, cold power. "Mikhail Volkov." "Ah," Mikhail said as Tessa entered. "The human who started all of this. Come to watch your king execute me." "I came to see justice done," Tessa said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. "Justice?" Mikhail laughed, ugly and bitter. "There is no justice in the world of immortals, girl. Only power and those strong enough to wield it." "You are wrong," Vlad said, standing. "Power without honor is nothing. You sought to harm my son, to threaten my people, to drag us back into the darkness. For that, you have forfeited your right to exist. Kill me then." Mikhail spat. "But others will rise. There will always be those who remember the old ways, who reject your weakness, perhaps, but they will not be you." Vlad raised his hand, and Tessa saw flames begin to dance along his fingers. Vampire fire, she'd learned, the only kind that could truly destroy their kind. "Wait," Tessa said. Everyone turned to look at her. Vlad lowered his hand, frowning. "Tessa, if you kill him, you're just proving his point. That power is all that matters." She moved closer, ignoring the way Mikhail's eyes tracked her like prey. "You told me you wanted to build peace. That means showing mercy even to your enemies. This creature tried to kill my son. Tried to kill you, I know, and he should be punished. But execution? That makes you just like him." Vlad stared at her for a long moment, then he laughed soft and wondering. 800 years I have lived, and a mortal woman teaches me about mercy. Very well, Tessa Sinclair. We will do it your way. He looked at Mikhail. You will be imprisoned. For a century you will remain in the deepest cells, cut off from your power, from the night, from everything you have known. And when you are finally released, if you threaten my people again, I will not hesitate to end you. Do you understand? Mikhail said nothing, but the hatred in his eyes was answer enough. Take him away, Vlad ordered, and guards moved forward to drag Mikhail from the throne room. When they were gone, Vlad descended from his throne and came to stand before Tessa. You continually surprise me, he said softly. Is that a good thing? It is the best thing. He took her hand, raising it to his lips in a gesture that felt ancient and courtly. You have saved my son, defended my people, and now stayed my hand from unnecessary bloodshed. How can I ever repay such debts? You already have. You kept me safe, you taught me to fight, you showed me a world I never knew existed. Tessa squeezed his hand. I think we're even. We will never be even, Vlad said. But perhaps we can move beyond debts and obligations. Perhaps we can simply be us yous? Tessa's heart was racing again. What does that mean? It means I find myself thinking of you every moment we are apart. It means your smile brings me more joy than I have known in centuries. It means that somewhere in the last 3 weeks I have fallen for you, Tessa Sinclair, and I do not wish to fight it any longer. He cupped her face in both hands. Stay, not as my guest or someone under my protection. Stay as yourself, as the woman I am learning to love. Tessa couldn't breathe. Vlad, I'm human. I'll age, I'll die. You're immortal. How could this possibly work? I do not know, he admitted. But I know I want to try, if you will have me. If you can imagine a future with a vampire king who is 800 years old and still learning how to be gentle. She thought about her life before. The small apartment, the routine days, the feeling that she was just going through the motions. She thought about the last 3 weeks, the terror and wonder and excitement of every day. She thought about Vlad's eyes when he looked at her, the gentleness in his hands despite their strength. I can imagine it, she whispered. I want to imagine it. Vlad kissed her then, and his lips were cold, but the kiss was fire. Tessa melted into him, wrapping her arms around his neck, feeling 800 years of loneliness and longing in the way he held her. When they finally broke apart, she was breathless and dizzy and happier than she'd ever been. Well, Nikolai said from beside the throne where he'd been watching with undisguised delight. It is about time. Vlad laughed, the sound rich and genuine. Indeed, though I think we have you to thank for this, my son. If you had not escaped to find her, I would never have met the woman who would change everything. Then I am glad I was kidnapped, Nikolai said solemnly, though his eyes were twinkling. If it led to this, the next few months passed in a blur of happiness Tessa had never imagined possible. She moved permanently into the court, though she kept her job at the clinic. Dr. Martinez was confused by her new overnight schedule but accepted it when she proved she could still do her work excellently. She divided her time between the human world and the vampire court, becoming a bridge between the two. Vlad courted her properly, by his ancient standards. He took her to dinners in restaurants where vampires and humans mingled, showed her the hidden parts of the city where their kind had lived for centuries, taught her the history of his people. She taught him about modern technology, about movies and music, about the small joys of human life. I have lived 8 centuries, he told her one night as they walked through an underground garden, and somehow I had forgotten the pleasure of simply existing, of finding joy in small moments. You have reminded me. You're welcome, Tessa said, leaning into his side. Though I think you're giving me too much credit. You were already a good man, I just helped you remember it, perhaps. He stopped walking, turning to face her. Tessa, there is something I must ask you. Something I have been afraid to broach. What is it? I am immortal. You are not. Every day you remain human, you age. Eventually you will die, and I will be left with centuries of loneliness. He took her hands. There is a way to prevent that. I could turn you, make you vampire. You would live forever at my side. Tessa's heart clenched. She'd known this conversation was coming, had thought about it herself in the quiet moments. And if I said no, if I wanted to remain human? Pain crossed his features, but he said, then I would love you for as long as you lived, and cherish every moment we had. I will not force this choice on you, Tessa. Your humanity is precious. If you wish to keep it, I will not argue. She loved him for that answer, for giving her the choice without pressure or expectation. Can I think about it? Of course, take all the time you need. But the choice was made for her 2 weeks later. Tessa was leaving the clinic late one night, tired after a complicated surgery on a dog that had been hit by a car. She was thinking about Vlad, about whether she wanted to become a vampire, about what her life would look like either way. She didn't see the man step out of the shadows until it was too late. The knife caught her in the side, sharp and burning. Tessa gasped and fell, her hand going to the wound. Blood, so much blood pouring between her fingers. "Message for the Vampire King," her attacker said, standing over her. "Tell him Mikhail's followers do not forget." Then he was gone, running into the night, and Tessa was alone on the pavement, bleeding out. She tried to reach her phone, but her fingers wouldn't work right. The world was going gray at the edges. She thought about Vlad, about never seeing him again, and the grief was worse than the pain. "No," she whispered, "not like this." Footsteps. Someone running. Then Damien was there, his face stark with horror. "Tessa! Hold on, I am calling the king." "No time," Tessa gasped. "Damien, please, I don't want to die." He understood immediately. "Are you sure?" "There is no going back." "Sure," she managed. "Do it." Damien bit his wrist and pressed it to her mouth. "Drink." The blood was cold and tasted like metal in winter. Tessa drank, feeling it burn down her throat into her veins. The pain in her side flared white-hot and then began to fade. Everything began to fade. "The transformation will take 3 days," Damien said, his voice seeming to come from very far away. "Sleep now, the king will be here soon." Tessa slept. She woke in the rose suite in the massive bed with Vlad sitting beside her. The moment her eyes opened, he gathered her into his arms, holding her so tightly she couldn't breathe. "I thought I lost you," he said, his voice broken. "When Damien called, when he told me what happened, I thought I was too late." "I'm okay," Tessa said. Her voice sounded strange, clearer somehow. Everything sounded clearer, and the world looked different, sharper, more vivid. "Damien saved me. How long have I been out?" 2 days. The transformation is nearly complete. By tomorrow night you will be fully vampire." He pulled back to look at her, and she saw anguish in his eyes. "I am sorry. You should have had more time to decide. This choice should not have been forced on you." "It wasn't forced, I chose." Tessa cupped his face, feeling the coldness of his skin that now matched her own. "I chose you. I chose forever. And I'd make the same choice again." Vlad kissed her, deep and desperate, and Tessa felt a hunger rise in her she'd never known before. Not for blood, not yet, but for him. For life, for everything. "I love you," Vlad said against her lips. "I have loved you since the moment you threw coffee at an armed hunter to save my son. You are brave and kind and stronger than anyone I have ever known. And I will spend eternity proving myself worthy of you." "You already are," Tessa said. "You already are." The final day of her transformation, Vlad stayed with her as the last of her humanity burned away. It hurt like fire in her veins, but he held her through it, whispering endearments in languages so old she'd never heard them. When it was over, when she opened her eyes and saw the world through her new vampire vision, the first thing she saw was him. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Different. Stronger. Hungry." She laughed. "Is that normal?" "Very normal. Come, let me teach you how to feed properly." He took her to a blood bank the court maintained, supplied by willing human donors who were paid well and protected. Tessa drank and felt power flood through her, felt her new body settle into itself. By the time she was finished, she felt more alive than she ever had as a human. "There is one more thing," Vlad said, leading her back to the throne room. The entire court was assembled there, hundreds of vampires watching with curious eyes. Vlad led Tessa to stand before the throne. "My people," he said, his voice ringing through the vast space. "You know this woman, Tessa Sinclair, who saved my son and showed mercy to our enemy, who has proven herself worthy in every way. Tonight she joins our ranks as a vampire." But more than that, he turned to her, taking her hand. "Tessa, I have lived 800 years alone. I had resigned myself to ruling without a partner, to facing eternity without love. Then you came into my life and changed everything. Would you do me the honor of becoming not just my partner but my queen? Of ruling at my side for all the centuries to come?" Tessa's heart, which no longer beat but still felt, swelled with emotion. "Yes," she said. "Yes, absolutely yes." The court erupted in applause, vampires who had been skeptical of the human now celebrating her. Vlad kissed her, and Tessa knew she'd found her home. Not just in the court, but in him. The coronation happened 3 months later, a lavish ceremony that blended ancient vampire traditions with modern sensibilities. Tessa wore a gown of deep red silk, her hair crowned with silver and diamonds. Vlad stood beside her, resplendent in black and silver, and when he placed the crown on her head, she felt the weight of centuries and the lightness of love all at once. "My queen," he said softly, for her ears only. "My love, my heart, forever," Tessa promised, "for all the forever we have." Nikolai stood on her other side, beaming with pride. He had become like a son to her, this ancient boy who had started everything. Seraphine was there too, fully healed, her eyes shining with approval. Damien stood with the guards, looking satisfied. All the court had gathered to witness the human woman become their queen, As Tessa looked out over the assembled vampires, she thought about the life she'd left behind. The small apartment, the routine job, the loneliness she'd never quite admitted to. She'd thought she was happy, but she'd been sleepwalking through existence. Now she was awake. Now she was alive in ways she'd never imagined. And she had centuries ahead of her to explore it all. After the ceremony, there was a feast. Tessa was still learning to navigate vampire social politics, but Vlad was always at her side, guiding her through the complex web of alliances and hierarchies. They danced together in the great hall, moving to music that had been old when Vlad was young. "Are you happy?" he asked as they swayed together. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Tessa said honestly. "Though I'll admit, I never imagined my life would turn out like this, nor did I. I thought I knew what my existence would be. 800 years of solitary rule, of duty and loneliness. You changed everything." He pulled her closer. "I cannot imagine eternity without you now. Good thing you don't have to." Later, in their private chambers, Vlad showed her just how much she meant to him. They came together with passion that had been building for months, cold skin against cold skin, two immortals discovering each other. Tessa learned that vampires could feel pleasure as intensely as humans, maybe more so, and that Vlad was as giving and attentive in this as he was in everything else. "I love you," she gasped as he moved above her, his white hair falling around them like a curtain. "I love you so much, and I love you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "My queen, my salvation, my Tessa." The months that followed were an education. Tessa learned to rule, to navigate the complex politics of the vampire world. She discovered she had a talent for diplomacy, for finding common ground between factions. Where Vlad was ancient and sometimes inflexible, she brought a fresh perspective and modern sensibilities. Together, they made the court stronger than it had been in centuries. She maintained her connection to the human world too, insisting that they not isolate themselves completely. With Vlad's permission, she established a clinic in the court, treating both vampires and humans. She taught other vampires about modern medicine, about the value of preserving life rather than taking it. "You are transforming us," Vlad told her one evening as they reviewed proposals for new human-vampire cooperation initiatives. "Making us better than we were. We're transforming each other," Tessa corrected. "You've taught me strength, patience, how to think beyond a single lifetime. I couldn't do any of this without you." He kissed her, soft and sweet. Partners then. In everything she agreed. Nikolai thrived with both of them as parents. He'd been lonely, Tessa realized, an eternal child with no one who truly understood. She and Vlad gave him stability, love, a family. He bloomed under their care, his natural intelligence and kindness emerging fully. One evening as they sat together in the private garden, Nikolai said, "I am glad I was kidnapped." Vlad looked up sharply. "Nikolai, I am serious, father. If those hunters had not taken me, if Tessa had not saved me, none of this would have happened. You would still be alone. She would still be in her small life, and I would not have a mother." He looked at Tessa with those ancient young eyes. "So I am glad. Even though it was frightening, even though I was in danger, it led us here." Tessa's eyes stung with tears she could no longer shed. "Come here," she said, and pulled him into a hug. "You are the bravest person I know, and I am honored to be your mother in whatever way that means for our family." Vlad joined the embrace, wrapping them both in his arms. "My family," he said softly. "Everything I never knew I needed." Years passed, then decades. Tessa grew into her role as queen, beloved by her people for her compassion and wisdom. She and Vlad ruled together, a partnership so strong that even their enemies hesitated to challenge them. The human-vampire cooperation initiatives flourished, creating a new era of understanding between their worlds. Mikhail remained imprisoned, his followers scattered or converted to the new way of thinking. The court prospered, peace reigned, and through it all, Tessa and Vlad loved each other with an intensity that never dimmed. Every night they spent together felt like a gift. Every conversation, every touch, every shared glance across the throne room during tedious council meetings. They had forever, and they treasured every moment of it. On the anniversary of their coronation, 50 years after that night in the alley, when Tessa had heard a child crying and changed her life forever, Vlad took her back to the surface. They stood in that same alley, now cleaned up and renovated, part of a gentrified neighborhood. "Do you regret it?" Vlad asked. "The life you gave up? The humanity you lost?" Tessa looked at the alley, remembering the terrified woman she'd been, remembering the small, frightened boy and the decision to help, remembering everything that had followed. "Not for a second," she said. "I thought I had a life before, but I was just existing. Now I'm living, really living, with you, with Nikolai, with our family and our people. This is where I was always meant to be." Vlad pulled her close, kissing her under the streetlights. I spent 800 years waiting for you, he said, and I would wait 800 more if I had to. You are my everything, Tessa, my heart, my home, my reason for continuing. And you're mine, she said, forever. They walked back to the hidden entrance to the court, hand in hand, an immortal king and his queen. Above them the city slept, unaware of the world that existed beneath its streets, unaware of the love story that had started with a scream in the night and a woman brave enough to investigate. In the throne room, Nikolai was waiting, along with Seraphine and Damien and the other members of their court family. A celebration had been prepared, marking their golden anniversary. 50 years, Seraphine said, raising her glass. The first of many, many more to come to our king and queen. To family, Nikolai added. To love, Damien said, his usually stern face soft. To forever, Vlad said, his eyes on Tessa. She smiled, looking around at the family she'd found in the most unexpected place, at the life she'd built from a single moment of courage. To forever, she echoed. And they drank to that, to the endless nights ahead, to the centuries they would spend together, to the love that had started with a debt and became something far greater, to the vampire king who learned to love again, and the human woman who saved him by saving his son. Outside, dawn was breaking over Chicago, sending the vampires to their rest. But in the secure chambers deep below, Tessa and Vlad lay together, wrapped in each other's arms, and knew that they had found something most immortals never did. They had found forever, and forever had never looked so bright. The years continued to unfold like pages in an endless book. Tessa watched the human world change from her unique vantage point, saw technology advance, saw society evolve. She helped guide the vampire world through these changes, ensuring they adapted without losing their essential nature. She never forgot where she came from. Once a month, she volunteered at a human animal shelter under a different name, using her veterinary skills to help creatures who couldn't help themselves. It kept her grounded, reminded her of the person she'd been before. Vlad supported this, understanding her need to maintain that connection. He often accompanied her, this ancient vampire king, spending his evenings socializing anxious dogs and bottle-feeding orphaned kittens. Watching him cradle a tiny tabby kitten with the same hands that had defeated countless enemies never failed to make Tessa fall in love with him all over again. You're a softie, she teased one evening as he carefully returned a sleeping kitten to its cage. Only with you, he said, but his small smile betrayed him. And perhaps with small helpless creatures, I am ancient and powerful. I am allowed some contradictions. You're allowed anything you want, Tessa said. You're the king. No, Vlad corrected, pulling her close. We are the king and queen. Partners, I rule nothing without you. It was true. The council had come to rely on both of them, seeking Vlad's wisdom and strength, Tessa's compassion and modern understanding. They balanced each other perfectly, two halves of a whole. Nikolai grew older in vampire terms, if not in appearance. At 170 years old, he was finally considered an adult by vampire standards. He chose to join the diplomatic corps, using his unique perspective as someone who remembered being human to build bridges between the worlds. I learned from the best, he told Tessa when she expressed pride in his work. You showed me that strength and kindness are not opposites, that we can be what we are without being monsters. I want to teach others that lesson. Your father would be proud, Tessa said. I'm proud. You are my mother in every way that matters, Nikolai said seriously. Blood and turning are not the only bonds that matter. Love is stronger than either. Tessa hugged him, this eternal boy who had become her son, and felt her unbeating heart swell with love. Centuries passed. Tessa and Vlad ruled wisely and well, their names becoming legend among both vampires and the humans who knew the truth. They faced challenges, of course. Rival vampires who sought the throne, human hunters who feared their kind, natural disasters and political upheavals. But they faced everything together, their bond only growing stronger with each passing year. On their 500th anniversary, Vlad took Tessa to a place he'd never shown anyone. A hidden chamber deep beneath the court, preserved exactly as it had been when he'd first claimed this territory over 1,000 years ago. This was my sanctuary, he explained, lighting ancient torches that cast flickering shadows on the stone walls. When I was young and angry and alone, I would come here. It was the only place I felt safe. The chamber was sparse, almost empty. A simple stone bench, a shelf with a few carefully preserved books, a window that looked out on an underground river. It was the most vulnerable thing he'd ever shown her. Thank you, Tessa said softly, understanding the gift this was, for sharing this with me, for letting me see all of you. You have seen all of me from the beginning, Vlad said. The monster and the man, the king and the fool. You loved me anyway. That is the greatest gift I have ever received. He produced a small box from his coat. Inside was a ring, ancient and beautiful, set with a blood-red ruby. This belonged to the woman I told you about, he said. The healer who changed my mind about humans. She gave it to me before she died, made me promise I would give it to someone who made me remember how to be human. I have carried it for 700 years, never finding the right person. He took Tessa's hand, until you. Tessa's eyes filled with the tears she could no longer shed, but the emotion was just as real. Vlad, you are my heart, he said simply, my eternity. And I want you to have this, to know that everything I am, everything I have been, everything I will be is yours. She let him slide the ring onto her finger, felt the weight of history and love in its cool metal. Then she kissed him, pouring 700 years of waiting and 500 years of love into it. Forever, she whispered against his lips. Forever, he promised. They made love there in that ancient sanctuary, christening his past with their present, binding everything he'd been to everything he'd become. It was sacred and profane, gentle and passionate, a celebration of their bond and a promise of all the centuries still to come. When they finally returned to the court, hand in hand, everyone could see the change in them. Some barrier had fallen, some final wall brought down. They were no longer just partners or lovers or husband and wife. They were soulmates in the truest sense, two beings who had found their perfect complement. Nikolai saw it immediately. You look happy, he said, though happy seemed too small a word for what radiated from them. We are, Tessa said simply. We truly are. The centuries continued. Wars came and went in the human world. Technology advanced beyond anything Tessa could have imagined when she was human. The vampire world evolved with it, adapting, changing, growing. And through it all, Tessa and Vlad remained constant, an anchor in the storm of time. They had their challenges. Periods where ruling was exhausting, where the weight of their responsibilities felt crushing. Times when they disagreed, when her modern sensibilities clashed with his ancient ones. But they worked through everything, committed to their partnership and their love. The secret, Vlad told Nikolai one evening when his son asked how they'd maintained their bond for so long, is that we choose each other. Every day, every night, for 700 years now, we have chosen to stay, to work, to love. That choice is what makes it real. And the fact that he's the most incredible man I've ever known doesn't hurt, Tessa added with a smile. Flatterer, Vlad said, but he pulled her close and kissed her temple. Nikolai watched them with the wistfulness of someone who had yet to find that kind of love for himself. I hope I find what you two have someday. You will, Tessa assured him. When you least expect it, someone will walk into your life and change everything. Just like I did for your father. Just like you did for both of us, Vlad corrected. My son, my love, my family. You gave me all of it. More centuries passed. Vampires and humans learned to coexist more openly. The secret societies giving way to cautious public knowledge. It wasn't perfect, there was still fear, still prejudice on both sides. But it was better than the hidden centuries before. Better than the violence and suspicion. Tessa became a symbol of that coexistence, a human who had chosen to become vampire, who bridged both worlds. She gave speeches at universities, worked with human governments, helped draft the accords that would govern vampire-human relations for generations. Vlad supported her in all of it, proud of the woman she'd become, the queen she was. He still called her his salvation, still looked at her like she hung the moon. After 1,000 years of love, he was no less devoted than he'd been on that first night. How do you do it? A young vampire asked Tessa once, someone newly turned and struggling with the weight of eternity. How do you face forever without being afraid? Tessa thought about that question carefully. I'm not going to lie and say it's easy. Eternity is long and there are hard moments, times when you'll feel the weight of all those years. But the secret is to live in the present, to find joy in the moment you're in, to love fiercely and completely, and to have someone by your side who makes forever feel like not nearly enough time. She looked at Vlad as she said it, found him watching her with those crimson eyes that had first frightened her and then captivated her. He smiled, and after 1,000 years together, it still made her feel like she was falling. On their 1,000th anniversary, the court threw a celebration that lasted 3 nights. Vampires came from all over the world to honor their king and queen, to celebrate a love that had become legendary. 1,000 years, Seraphine said in her speech, still beautiful, still devoted after all this time. Most vampires never find love at all, but these two found each other and built something beautiful, a family, a court, a new world. They are proof that even immortals can change, can grow, can become better. Nikolai spoke next, no longer a boy in demeanor, still in appearance. My parents saved me, not just from the hunters who would have used me, but from loneliness, from the isolation of existing without truly living. They taught me that family isn't about blood or turning, it's about choice, about showing up, about love, and I am honored to be their son. Finally Vlad stood. The throne room fell silent. hundreds of vampires waiting to hear what their ancient king would say. I am old, Vlad began. Older than most of you can imagine. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have witnessed humanity's darkest hours and brightest moments. I have lived through plague and war, through periods of peace and times of terror, and through all of it I was alone. He looked at Tessa, held out his hand. She took it and stood beside him, their fingers intertwined. Then a woman heard my son crying and chose to help. She charged into danger for a child she didn't know. She defied armed men to keep him safe, and when I met her, when I saw the courage and compassion in her eyes, I knew my long loneliness was over. Tessa Sinclair came into my life and changed everything. She saved my son. She showed mercy to my enemy. She chose to become vampire, to become my queen, to spend eternity at my side, and every night for 1,000 years she has made that choice again. To stay, to love, to build this life with me. His voice roughened with emotion. I have no words adequate to express what she means to me. She is my heart, my home, my everything, and I will spend the next 1,000 years, and the 1,000 after that, and all the eternities to come, proving myself worthy of the gift she has given me. Tessa was crying tearless vampire tears, overwhelmed by love and gratitude and sheer joy. You already have, she managed. Every day you already have. They kissed in front of the assembled court, 1,000 years of love in that embrace. The vampires erupted in applause and cheers, celebrating not just their rulers but the hope they represented, that even immortals could find happiness, that love could last forever. The celebration continued long into the night, but eventually, Tessa and Vlad slipped away to their private chambers. They stood on their balcony, looking out over the underground city they'd built together, and Vlad wrapped his arms around her from behind. Are you happy? He asked, the same question he'd asked 1,000 years ago. Happier than I ever imagined possible, Tessa said, the same answer she'd given then. And I'll be even happier in another 1,000 years. Promise? Promise. Forever, remember? Forever, Vlad agreed, and turned her in his arms. I love you, Tessa. From that first moment when you saved my son to this moment now, I have loved you. And I will love you until the stars burn out and the world ends. Then I guess we'll be together a very long time, Tessa said with a smile. Because I love you too. Forever and always. They kissed under the artificial stars of their underground sky, an immortal king and his queen, two souls who had found each other against all odds, who had built a love that would last millennia, who had proven that even in darkness, even in the realm of vampires and blood and ancient power, love could thrive. The story that began with a scream in an alley had become an epic spanning 1,000 years, and it was far from over. There were countless nights ahead, infinite possibilities, eternal love. Tessa had chased kidnappers and saved an heir, and the vampire king had vowed to repay her forever. But what he gave her was so much more than repayment. He gave her love, family, purpose, and a life beyond anything she'd dreamed. And what she gave him was equally precious companionship, understanding, a reason to be better than he'd been. She gave him humanity in the midst of his immortality. Together they ruled wisely and loved fiercely. Together they faced everything the centuries brought. Together they proved that forever wasn't too long when you spent it with the right person. As they stood on their balcony, wrapped in each other's arms, Tessa thought about the woman she'd been. The lonely veterinary tech walking home through dark alleys, feeling like something was missing from her life. She'd found what was missing. Found it in the last place she ever expected, in the crimson eyes of a vampire king, in the grateful smile of his son, in an underground court of immortals. She'd found home, she'd found family, she'd found love, she'd found forever, and forever had never been so beautiful.